Welcome to the Treasury Update podcast, presented by Strategic Treasurer, your source for interesting Treasury news, analysis, and insights in your car, at the gym, or wherever you decide to tune in.
Welcome to the Treasury Update podcast. I'm Craig Jeffery. I'm your host today. I'm joined by Steven Peterson from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, for having me.
It's great to do a podcast in the studio. It's nice that we live close enough to this office to do that. So thanks for joining us. Our podcast today is called RPA, API, Agentic AI, and Orchestration Progression. So that's going to be a lot to unpack. And so words like orchestration, that'll deal with how agents and agentic AI work. And progression is the shift of technology over time. I want to talk through some of those examples, some of what Chick-fil-A is doing, some of what's happening in industry, and dialogue on these topics. So thanks for joining, Steve.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I wanted to start off with the first part, talking about robotic process automation or bots at Chick-fil-A. You've put in quite a bit in Treasury. Maybe you just describe some of what you put in and some of what the challenges were. Like it achieved some advantages, and there were certainly some things that would be considered headaches.
Yeah, that's a great question, Craig. At Chick-fil-A, we pride ourselves in trying to be ahead of the technology curve. There's a couple things we've done from the RPA process, and it's really kind of been impactful, kind of helped us, unlock some man hours and to save some time, for our Treasury team. A couple of those are bank statements. We had originally downloaded those from the bank portals. And as you guys know, that can be very time consuming, to log into each one. And so we employed a bot to be able to download those statements for us. Now, there's some challenges there. You have to reset your password every 60 to 90 days, or if you get a special code that has to come to your phone, text to you. If you get that, you have to call the data engineer to be able to enter that for the bot. And so even though it was helpful, there was some time savings from that process, still had its challenges. And so, but for us, the benefit outweighed the challenges, which was really nice. And, there's some other examples for like check exceptions. With RPA, it's nice if you have some processes that are yes and no, and then if and then. And so if you do check exceptions, there's a time frame where you have to process those exceptions. And for us, as Chick-fil-A gets bigger, we have more locations, you're going to have more checks. And so for us, having those bots, we employ 3 or 4 bots to be able to help process those check exceptions. So it works really well because, again, it cuts down on the time that some of our Treasury folks need to take to process those. There's some that the bot can't process, and those come to us, and we manually process those. So, but it's been great to unlock the potential of RPA.
Do you name these bots?
Not really. They're bot 1, bot 2.
I would suggest on the ones that handle the checks, you call them like Check-fil-A, Check-fil-B.
Those are good names. We'll have to look into that. So
we'll have to submit that to a group that will decide that. But to both of your examples, there's things that work really well about them and things that don't. And I think you would say that their bots are helpful and fast, but they're not adaptive. You can do if then, but there's no recycling of it. It's yes, no, if then, and then they get stuck or they get broken, like the example of we need a code. Now a human has to get involved, and I think you're describing as it comes to Treasury's got to call IT, plug that in so the bot works again, which is suboptimal, better than what it was, but not as desirable as it could be. And so that's part of the progression discussion. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's definitely right. Because again, it's better than it was, what we were doing, but it's not optimal. There are other better ways to do that process. And as technology changes, technology evolves, it's like, okay, what's next for Treasury? And again, because you only have so many headcount for Treasury, you want to make sure your folks are working value-added, strategic type work. And for us to be able to reduce kind of the manual processes, that manual work that we could leverage RPA or we could leverage some other technology, we're looking at doing that again for our team.
Yeah, that's really helpful. The progression, we were talking earlier, you can have Excel or you have Excel with macros. You can use bots, you can use APIs, artificial intelligence, agentic AI to orchestrate and perform functions or agents that do those activities. And they're different. But one of the next steps that we had agreed to talk about was the use of APIs, or APIs instead of having a bot go out and download balances and transactions from the banks, which works and can break more frequently. APIs appear to be a little more robust, maybe not universally accepted by banks, or they're in the process of adding those. $1 trillion banks are up. Next level banks are working on it. Same thing with smaller banks. But can you talk a little bit about what you've done with APIs then?
Yeah, so APIs, we're kind of still early in that journey as well. We have consolidated our banking statements. So like you said, moving from RPA to APIs with bank statements. And so what we do is we have our partner banks send our bank statements to our largest bank, and then we have an API connection with that bank. And so we're able to get the statements, bank detail for the day, from just one connection, one API connection. And it really is helped. It's, RPA is kind of like a gravel road. APIs is like a paved road with a couple little potholes, but it's still good. You're still getting A to B in a pretty good amount of time. And so, for us, that has really helped us kind of streamline things, because then you don't have the bots. You don't have to, change password. You don't have to, enter a special code in for it. So we've been kind of looking at other ways we can leverage APIs. APIs could be a little expensive, so it depends on what the need is for APIs. But we feel like, for us, if it helps, speed up the process, gets us information faster so we can make decisions quicker, it's worth the cost.
Yeah, making decisions quicker is useful on, let's say, on the investment side.
Right.
You can make a decision earlier. You can get a higher rate with a higher quality counterparty than you can going later. You might end up with a lower quality counterparty at a slightly lower rate. Plus it saves time.
Right.
So just a little bit of follow-up on the API side. It's how often is the API breaking compared to the bots?
Compared to the bot, not as often as the bot.
Okay.
The bot, the good thing about the bot doesn't take sick days either. So it's better than a human downloading the bank statements. But again, it has its challenges and pitfalls. But the APIs, unless you're adding new bank accounts, works relatively well. We don't usually have any issues. If we have issues, it's some technology issue usually on our end. But probably the more complicated process is to add another account onto it. There is a process to do so, but as far as it breaking or us not receiving our information, it very rarely does that happen.
I liked how you're using an aggregation or an aggregator. Your largest bank is your aggregator. And so not every bank has APIs, but you've solved for that by having, whatever the method is, they're pushing it to this other aggregator, and now you're getting the API connection through them. So it's solving for all without everyone being up to speed, right? It's like
right. I
don't take analog phone calls and digital phone calls and letters. They all come to you in the preferred method, and someone else is handling that differences. That's a great example. Talking about artificial intelligence, we follow the typical view that there's three primary types in terms of for this discussion. There's machine learning, which is pattern detection and extrapolation, machine learning that can tell what's occurring and understand patterns of numbers and other activity. There's generative AI, the ability to create, and then there's agentic AI, the ability to do. So we just share those definitions generally. I assume you're fairly in line with those, or do you have more color on any of those that you think about them in a different way?
No, we don't. We think of them like you mentioned. Can we leverage agents? Can we leverage machine learning or predictive analytics? So we look at them from that perspective as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I think that's really helpful. So on that, you used a term when we were talking or a phrase, because there's more than one words. How do we move from interest to implementation? But before we get to that part about interest implementation, how do you think about generative AI and agentic AI, whether they're together, you're breaking apart? What are some of the things that you think you'll want to do or do want to do or are working towards doing?
Yeah, that's a long list, Craig. There's a lot of things we want to do from a treasury perspective. For us, it's like, again, we're wanting to reduce the manual processes, reduce the manual work, and have our folks work on more value added, more strategic projects and work. And so for us, we've identified some use cases. One of them is, okay, taking agreements or documents you get. Those are lengthy, very, very long. It could be 10, 15 pages. It's like, hey, can we get ChatGPT to summarize the business and financial risk of that document, of that agreement? So which would be nice. We also produce a monthly economic report that's internal for the company. It's like, could we take a lot of the research we receive from our banking partners, from other establishments, and be able to summarize on interest rates, summarize on inflation. And so, some of those things that take a while to write out and, takes time for the team to do is like, they're doing the research, but it's like, hey, if we can have somebody do the research and them kind of validate it, I think it makes a lot of sense for us.
Well, I really like your example of, summarize these financial reports, break out the information. They tend to be really good at summarizing information. So we certainly use tools like that to do that type of summarization. It's helpful. It tends to be very accurate. I think most people are familiar with using, if you're in Teams or Zoom, you might have some kind of note taker or AI agent that summarizes it. And when you read the summaries, sometimes it's like, that's really great. That's really great. And then it's like, we didn't agree to that. It's like it captures some information correctly, but reviewing a one-page summary of an hour meeting where there was thousands and thousands of words said is really efficient. Like, you can read through it right away, adapt it, and then it's ready to go. You essentially have your meeting minutes, your action list done very rapidly by spending, less than 5 minutes to review the core meeting minutes. That is really, really powerful. We use it. We're doing two things. One is we put out a lot of content. So we want to have consistent styles. And we have some different styles that we use. So we have a media outlet, CTM file, which is UK based. And so it uses official English, not US English, right? So the words are different. Some of the style is different. So we make sure we write in that style. We follow a certain style guide, have phrasing, methods of saying things. And so when we're polishing and editing, we have created a bot. It's called ClaireBot. Claire's the primary driver behind that. And so we follow the Chicago style guide, if that means anything to writers who are on the call. We use the Oxford comma. There's a number of other rules that we have, and we want consistency with that. We also load all of our writing in there. So it learns from our writing is how we do it. Because if you've ever looked at AI generation of stuff, it's like, not only this, but also this. And it's like, it's constant, generalized writing on the internet. It's not natural in our view. It's close, it's good, but it's not our style, and it's not the use of phrases, terms, and putting things together. So we have a guide that helps bring our writing in line with our standards to support what our editors do. So there's usually I'll call it a smoothing process that helps that. We still have human editors help refine it. It never goes out the door without human editors before and after, but we do use those tools to run through our writing very quickly. That's one example. We're also working on, I would call it, news and data curation. If you say, I can get buried by information, it's like, well, is someone curating the news? And if you go into Google or Bing, you say, send me summaries of this company or this topic, and you have more than a couple of topics, you get your news feed every day, and it's like, you're buried. You're like, I can't spend 3 hours reading all this information. So we continue to work on being able to review hundreds of sources of information, have a way of prioritizing articles, content, ideas, and do that by role or persona. So the treasurer may be concerned about these 5 things: global macroeconomics, what's happening with central banks, economic type information, and some key elements in certain regions. A risk manager is concerned about FX rates, different types of insurance issues, etc. A liquidity manager may care about rates and how they're changing, availability in the market, what some of the things that are occurring, and so on. So if you look at 5 or 6 personas, they may weight articles very differently from each other. What's the most important thing for those roles? So we're working on a way of more rapidly boiling those things down and serving them up based on persona. So if you're a treasurer, you're like, this is what I want as a treasurer, and I get it. summarize. So I'm working off a sheet or two, and I can dig in more deeply to any topics that surprise me, but it's just what I want. And if I'm a risk manager, I'm a cash manager, I'm in charge of payments, I can see what's most relevant to me. There's some elements that are common, there's some elements that are different. So we continue to work on that, trying to do that. And largely we're doing that with people, with like what we write for CTM file to summarize that. And so we're trying to do much more in that area. So those are a few of the things we're doing on the writing side.
Yeah, those are great examples. And I think another use case for us that we want to do is on daily cash flow forecasting. I mean, that's an Achilles heel for a lot of treasuries because it's so difficult to be able to forecast and to be able to update forecasts. And everybody's using still Excel. We always take surveys and look at, okay, who's using Excel versus who's using TMS systems or another type of forecasting tool. And majority are still using Excel. It's like, how can we get more accurate forecasts, like more timely information, and help us make more informed decisions? And it's not just looking at historical information, but looking at current trends. And I think by leveraging like machine learning or predictive analytics, we would be able to again get to a more accurate forecasting tool. So that is definitely on our list to look at. It's something that for us, when we're liquidity planning is very important, and it's something that's high on the list for us to look at in the future.
If we talk about that phrase you used, how do you move from interest to implementation? I think one of the elements that is important to understand is this orchestration aspect of agentic AI. If we have agents that do functions, you can stack a bunch of agents. You can do a bunch of agents that are separate, that may look to different sources. And then you have agents that orchestrate that activity, do these functions first, do them together, combine them. And I don't know if you have a way of explaining the difference between creating and doing between agents and agentic AI and generative AI. I mean, mostly they're going hand in hand, and one facilitates the doing, one facilitates the creation. Is there anything that you would say to someone to help understand the difference, or is that not as helpful to know?
Yeah, for us, I mean, yeah, we're looking at maybe leveraging both of those. On the agent side, I partner and network with a lot of other treasury professionals to see how they're leveraging AI, and just like you talked about, generative versus agentic AI, and see what use cases they're looking at. And also we look internally at Chick-fil-A, is like, who else is leveraging AI? And in our procurement group is using AI agents for answering questions when it comes to their vendor supplier portal. And so it's like, how can we leverage that? Leverage an AI agent within the treasury team, because we get a lot of questions about wires, we get a lot of questions about payments. It's like, could we leverage a AI agent to be able to facilitate and answer those questions? So for us, the difference is important, because what it does and how it supports and helps our treasury team is different, and can give us different outcomes, and also the implementation would be different as well, on both sides.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I was going to say something about like review this financial report and provide a summary. You could also have ones that provide this financial summary of this company or this particular situation, pull information about the macroeconomic environment, feed it in, or external sources to provide some sort of quick comparison. It's like, okay, now here's a 2-page summary of here's what we learned from this document. Here's other sources of information. Does that generate more questions we should be asking or due diligence? But onto the beginning of the bots or the robotic process automation to agentic AI, it seems that because agentic AI does things, it creates agents that can create, that can move things around, that can combine. It provides the doing function, the ability to act, that it is like the next generation of bots, or it's like maybe a full stair step above it. It's smart bots. It can not only do the if then, it is designed to be iterative. Like, this process didn't work, it'll cycle through. And you can make those so it's like get to the human in the middle. Whereas when a bot breaks, you're like, okay, we have to get involved. We have to go fix the bot, and then we run the bot again. It doesn't necessarily stop and say, come get help, whereas an agent or agentic AI can do that. I don't know, any thoughts on the Is agentic the version 4.0 of bots 1.0? How would you say that?
That's a great question. Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I think it is, 4.0, because, as technology evolves, as we get smarter, and as there's more, responsibilities and things that the Treasury team is needed for, we're going to have to work smarter. And, Chick-fil-A prides itself of being the head of the technology curve. And, we definitely want to leverage technology to its full potential. And I think that's what's important is like we leveraged RPA to its full potential. We had a couple bots. We used them in different circumstances, different groups within the finance and accounting organization. So they were working 24/7 and we couldn't get any more work out of those guys. So, and then we moved to APIs. And so we're leveraging the APIs we mentioned with our largest bank and getting the information from other banks as well. And we want to continue to do that where it's appropriate. But the focus has been moving towards AI in general. And we have a group within our finance and accounting group. They're called Financial Solutions. And what they're the intersection between IT and finance and accounting. So these guys, they're responsible for helping finance and accounting teams to be able to leverage technology, leverage the RPAs, the APIs, and the AI. And they're on the forefront. They're looking at the next technology. It's like, okay, where does Chick-fil-A need to be? Where does our finance accounting department need to be, from a technology perspective? And we all know IT groups, those teams are they're just maintaining systems. That's all they have the capacity to do. So by having this team sit kind of in the middle as a conduit between finance accounting and IT has been really helpful for us. We don't have to hire that expertise within Treasury because we have that expertise within the larger, broader finance and accounting group. So we lean on them to let us know, okay, what's the latest and greatest technology out there? And yeah, they have pointed to is like, hey, what do we need to move to AI? It's like APIs are great and we still can leverage them where leveraging them versus AI makes sense because there might be some things you just need to pull information. You don't need to have that machine learning. You don't need to have that decision making. You just need to pull data and get into your data lake. So it's the trade-off between, okay, how do we continue to leverage APIs where it makes sense and it's cost effective, but how do we leverage the new AI revolution that's coming for us to, again, be more productive, have more automation and reduce a lot of manual processes.
That's a great overview of how it works at Chick-fil-A. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are jealous that you have some other teams that help support that, but that's a call to work well with and integrate between the business and tech. And I would like to talk a little bit more after I ask you one more question. I would like to talk more about the team, the skills, where you see those things going, what's necessary, like within Treasury, and beyond just use an outside area, because some familiarity with the tools and what they can do is helpful, but it's even more helpful if there's a deeper level of knowledge of what can be the possible, the what if. But I was wondering if you could just spend a minute or so describing Chick-fil-A for those who may not have restaurants near them, and then what's your role at Chick-fil-A?
Sure. Chick-fil-A is a family-owned and privately held company founded in 1967 by True Cathy. We are the third largest quick service restaurant company in the U.S. We have more than 3,000 locations across the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. And we are continuing to expand internationally as we opened our first restaurant in the UK earlier this year. And Craig, we're not stopping there. We're also really excited to be opening our first Singapore restaurant in late 2025, marking our entry into Asia. And for those of you who don't know, we are headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. And as it relates to my role, I lead the Treasury department at Chick-fil-A. I've been with the company for 12 years, all in Treasury. And in this team, we are responsible for multiple bodies of work, including cash management activity, capital markets, customer payments, gift cards, and international Treasury operations. A lot of fun work going on at Chick-fil-A and in our Treasury group. I've spent my whole career in Treasury working for both the Home Depot and Coca-Cola before I came to Chick-fil-A. I consider myself a Treasury lifer.
Many people are displaying interest in AI, not just generative AI generally, but in finance for, can I do a forecast? Can I detect anomalies like quality control or fraud? Can it help me summarize my financial information or ensure I'm compliant or identify risks? There's a significant range of activity. We have a report coming out as well. We may drop that in the show notes for a a report on AI, generative AI, and agentic AI. That will be in the show notes, so you can look at that. But, moving from interest to implementation, how do you look at that? How do you evaluate that personally, or is there a formal mechanism at Chick-fil-A?
That's a great question. There's really no formal evaluation. It's just how we look at it from a Treasury perspective. And I talked a little bit about the financial solutions team that we leverage to help us with some of the technology decisions. But we look at evaluating the impact and how difficult it is to implement. So again, we want to get the most benefit for the cost. And that cost could be from a dollars perspective or a resource perspective. And so for us, it's like, okay, wow, how many man hours would we save, or what benefit would this new technology or AI bring to the Treasury group? But how difficult is it to implement? Because we only have so many bodies to go around to look at, implementing these different technology advancements as it relates to APIs or AI. So it's like we got to make sure we get the most bang for our buck when we're looking at that. So again, we're looking at size of impact and how difficult it is to implement.
Given that AI is developing so rapidly, something that may be extremely difficult to implement today is very hard tomorrow, is hard the day after, becomes easier. Maybe not days, but let's say months. Because we've seen advancements in how quickly we can do things and how well we can train it. Given that that's changing so dramatically, is that kind of a constant iterative process of like, hey, this would be a huge benefit, but it's a 10x difficulty to do. This is, a third the value, it's 1x. So in the current scale, it would be the 3 to 1 would move up to the first position. But over time, I wonder if that will shift, because it gets the more complex things, if you can get them done right and properly, those are very thorny. I wonder if that'll shift over time. How do you think about that change in what's occurring?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, we do think about that from a Treasury perspective. And we also think about, the skill sets on our team. Can we do some of this work ourselves? And then can we support it after it's implemented? That's huge. That's significant. So that's what, the financial solutions team I mentioned is like, they're there to implement these new technology advancements. And it's like, it's our job to be able to maintain those. I mean, again, we can go ask questions, we can call them up. They're close to us, but for our teams, it's they don't for a financial solutions team, they don't have the resources to be able to maintain these systems 24/7. So it's really up to our team to be able to do so. So we look at it also from that perspective. It's like, okay, benefit, how hard is it to implement? Also, how difficult is it going to be to maintain as we go on with our work? So that's something we take a look at. We have a few people on our team that are very curious and are willing to learn about about the new technology, about AI. And I think that's what's important, is you have the folks on your team that are curious and they're willing to learn. And that helps kind of support that, those new initiatives, those new projects, those new advancements in technology, whether it's AI or APIs. Because again, the solution's only as good as it working correctly and giving you the right output that you need. We've always heard the term garbage in, garbage out. We don't want that to be the case. Again, if somebody's going to spend a lot of resources and time implementing something, we want to make sure it's going to be here for next month, next year, 5 years from now, unless we, come up with some other technological advancement. But it's for us, it's as things evolve, we're always looking and always talking again to different Treasury professionals and networking and say, hey, what are you guys leveraging? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? Because, for us, if we can learn from other people's, whether it's mistakes or things that they felt have been very helpful or beneficial, that really, for us, we can go back and tell that story and say, hey, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, and this is the time it took to implement, and these were the resources needed to maintain it after the fact. So again, yeah, long-winded answer to your question, but we're always looking at the next thing for us. But again, just tempering that with, okay, how difficult is it going to implement? What's the benefit? But then also, how difficult it is going to be to maintain after it's implemented.
I wonder if that phrase, the garbage in, garbage out, will change over time to garbage in, garbage filtered to value out, right? Everything is in total garbage. It's like it's inconsistent. And so you run into problems. Our master data is not right. This is not correct. But the ability to filter stuff can make less valuable data in the old schema become more valuable if you train your agents on it, train the AI on that to know and recognize what's good out of that mess. That seems like it might hold value. But as your team, like you said, you have a couple of people who are really interested. Do you have tools? Are you allowing people to use tools to gain experience like ChatGPT, Copilot, Taskade, whatever? Are you using tools at Chick-fil-A that they can have on their desktop to play with things?
Yeah, no, we definitely leverage Chat, GPT, and Copilot. We've been kind of playing around with those tools and they've been very helpful. And again, I just encourage the team to be curious and to try new things and see how it can help. Again, a lot of people have the negative connotation of that AI is going to take away jobs. I'm of the belief it's really going to help supplement jobs. It's going to help, again, people to be able to learn new skill sets. Also, again, to be able to develop their career a little bit in a different aspect. And also, again, I mentioned before, is like work on more strategic, more value-added work. So I'm, again, encouraging the team, look at what we do today and look at, how maybe what Copilot or Chat GPT can help, within your daily role.
I'm not going to ask you this question directly, but this is my view on will it take away jobs? It's calibrated a little bit. There's lots of opportunities of what can come up because it's a powerful tool. But if you have individual tasks, you have agents that stack together the complete tasks. Tasks can roll up to functions. So in some ways, some things you may be able to almost complete an entire function with this orchestration of tasks or a huge portion of it. And if you do enough functions, those might roll into this job is no longer needed. It's only a fraction of that job is needed to do those activities. I think that's an aspect. And so the human in the middle is crucial. Like, what does the human need to do? So the ability to scale is much more important. Those will be more important jobs because they'll be running more powerful tools that can do more things. So if you think, all the jobs are going to disappear, I don't think that's right either. And if you think that that's not going to radically transform functions, that I don't think that's right either, because there's so much that can be done. And there are some jobs that right now, how things are put together is like all of that can be automated within a couple of years. You need to make sure you're in a position where, okay, I can run and have span and control the bots or these tools to be more powerful. I think that's something we need to think of in how we train our staff. Like, you have some people that are learning these tools because you can keep setting more and more tools against the challenges you have. In Treasury, for example, there's so many things that are not done that could be done. I don't think it's going to be like, hey, we're out of work. There are some areas where a lot of the work is very, very, task oriented, maybe functions, and a lot of that can be displaced. We've seen it in areas like certain types of auditing. It takes out these whole chunks of activity because you can have the bots, the business intelligence tools pull all that data out, summarize it quickly. So someone's reviewing that, whereas you had a team of 6 people doing that. So there's definitely some roles that will be done away with or change very dramatically. But I think there's plenty of work to do, especially if we're leaning into it and thinking about it, if I can use that term. But that interest implementation, so there's the talking to people, there's the trying things. The other aspect of that in terms of orchestration and learning, moving from evaluation to effectiveness, so that for us, we pilot things a lot, and we have a huge list of things we want to do. We prioritize it. We try to put those in place. We work on it. And that training process is fairly long in some cases, right? Especially depending on how complex it is. If you're just like, do this simple function, it's like really quick. Other times it takes a lot more training. So evaluating, like you said, what seems to have the most payoff. And some of that's how long will it take to do, like how complex is it? Like training things to really think like very deep specialists in different areas. It takes a lot more training than I would have thought. But it's really quick and you can iterate quickly. And then you get to the point where like, okay, we can run parallel, see how this is working, and then move that to production. So the interest implementation or evaluation to effectiveness and the continual improvement. What are some thoughts that you have on moving to that effectiveness? And that's kind of a general question, but maybe you can answer generally, or maybe with this idea of orchestration. If we have agents that can do all these different agent tasks, and coordinate the agents. Where do you see effectiveness coming? Is it first version, or is it over time things will become much more effective? Or
Yeah, I think it's over time, to be honest, because you mentioned is like, yeah, the training part aspect of it could take a long period of time for a team to learn how to manage the AI and what it can do and unlock its, full potential. For right now, Treasury teams are lean. All Treasury teams are lean. And they have their day job to do. You still have to move money, still have to make investments, still have to, make sure, vendors, suppliers, people get paid. So it's taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about the AI aspect and the benefits, and just again, being able to train the AI agents to be effective. And to your point, to run in parallel, you have to run parallel, because and you have to have some sort of governance around around the process, because again, you don't want AI to be like making a lot of these big decisions for you. You don't want them to make investment decisions. They might could give you recommendations, but you probably don't want them making decisions and making those payments on behalf of your organization. So I think it's something that over time I think is people are going to learn and going to be able to leverage.
I think that's wise. The other thing I was wanting to just bat around, this is not necessarily a question, but a long time ago, it was like you write macros, you write these huge macros that do like millions of steps, and then you want to test it and something breaks. And then the only way you could really debug it is either to just miraculously know what it is or to step it through. And so it does each individual discrete thing. You watch what happens, and then you see, oh, it bended here because we didn't move the cursor to the upper left cell to go, whatever, to find the home plate, wherever you're going, and then you fix that part of the process. These discrete agents that can be orchestrated can have checkpoints, and if something's not working out right, it can bring the human in and fix it on the fly, as opposed to time to bring the debugger in. It seems the ability to break things down to small tasks and have these tasks orchestrated, or these individual activities to tasks, or task to activities, however you look at that, is extremely powerful, because it's easier to break things up in these bite-sized pieces than orchestrate all those bytes into the meal, or whatever we're using for an analogy there. Any thoughts on that? Just the breaking things down to smaller tasks and activities is going to be more powerful, or does that need to factor into our thinking about what do we turn these tools loose on?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be helpful. To your example of the macro, if there's a problem there, you have to go through the whole macro, and it takes a lot of time, versus like the bite-sized pieces, like you said, that you can break it up in. It's like people can pinpoint the issue and the problem. And people get frustrated when they can't figure something out. And so to have that, again, the smaller pain points per se, I think will be beneficial. Because again, there's people who get frustrated. It's like, hey, I can't figure this spreadsheet out. And they've been given a spreadsheet from somebody else. They didn't create it, but there's a problem, there's an issue, and it doesn't run. It doesn't run smoothly, and there's bugs or issues that they can't fix. With the AI, I think looking at how AI is going to change, and hopefully maybe in the future and future rollouts that it's going to be able to fix itself. You will, maybe you'll have issues, problems, you'll be able to pinpoint, but then also you can help the AI process fix itself, through different things. So,
yeah, that's very helpful. I want to give you a chance to any final thoughts. One of them, if you could answer, as you share any final thoughts, are how impactful do you think AI will be in Treasury over the next 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years, and from minor, along the lines like RPA, major or transformational?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I think as people learn more about AI, and that there's more use cases out there, and people see the benefit and hear about the benefit, it'll be more disruptive to the Treasury profession. So I think it's going to be major, especially 5 or 7 years. I think it's minor now, because I think people are looking at it. They're peering over the fence to say, okay, what's everybody else doing? And I think it's going to be, once people figure out other groups and teams are doing something, they're going to have the fear of missing out. So I think they're going to learn from those use cases and learn again from, what went well, what didn't go well. And I think too, there'll just be a challenge from a headcount perspective in the Treasury profession to add people, and there will be an encouragement to leverage AI, to leverage technology. And as technology changes, as it evolves, it gets better, it gets faster, and it can do more things. I think you'll find more Treasury groups trying to leverage, the technology. But I think it's going to be hard, because I think you're going to have to look for different Treasury professionals in the future with, again, curious. They're curious and their willingness to learn, but also, it's like, hey, you're going to have to work with technology. In the past, when I started in Treasury almost 25 years ago, you work with Excel. That's probably the extent of your technology, plus your desktop. Now, within the Treasury team, you're having to work with a lot of different technologies, whether it's a TMS system, whether it's other things that you're looking at and leveraging from a technology perspective. And so I think that's going to be important as we move, into the future.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming in and talking about an orchestrated progression, RPA, API, agentic AI. Thanks, Steven.
Thank you for the invitation. Enjoyed it.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Treasury Update podcast. Be sure to follow Strategic Treasurer on LinkedIn. Just search for Strategic Treasurer. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.